Here we go. Good evening, guys. We're sorry we were running a little bit late, but here we go. We're going to get in the countdown. We're going to get the show rolling. Come and hang out and talk some football with us.
Time for the 5-minute countdown. It's the would-be Sunday night spectacular, but we've been doing it on Mondays, and it's been working out so well, so we might as well do it on Monday night. We're gonna talk about 4 teams as per usual, our previews for the season. The teams we'll be talking about be the Arizona Cardinals, the Cleveland Browns, the Washington Commanders, and the Denver Broncos. We'll have our news and notes here shortly after our 5-minute share session, and we'll see you here shortly. It's showtime!
How's everybody doing tonight? How you doing, David?
I'm okay. Excited to be talking about football. We had a great weekend, I thought, of preseason action. Wanted to start out by talking about, basically how the first-round quarterbacks did in their games. And we're going to talk about two of the guys that were drafted to two of the teams that we're going to preview tonight, for their upcoming season. And, I thought that Caleb Williams played fine. He had a Patrick Mahomes-esque throw to DeAndre Swift that picked up the majority of his yards, led him to a field goal drive on his first drive in the game. He went 4 of 7 for 95 yards, and I thought he played well. What did you think of him? Did you manage to catch the game? And just
actually, I did not manage
right.
to catch that game. So, unfortunately, I missed it, but I heard that he did pretty good for his first game experience.
Yeah, he played limited. I think he played, 2 series. Like I said, 4 of 7, in the game, 95 yards. They kicked the field goal. And for, his first action, I thought that was pretty good for him. The next quarterback was Michael Penix Jr., and he played for about a quarter. He went 9 of 16 for 104 yards. He did not look very mobile in his performance. So, they're not going to get any more mobility out of him than they would out of a Kirk Cousins. But he's a left-handed thrower compared to Cousins being the right-handed thrower. Cousins looked fine, in limited action. And so, he didn't participate or whatever. You've seen him during the pregame, and he looked like he was, ready to play. But, and I think he'll start, when the season begins. They just don't want to get him in any trouble. Coming off of that injury. The worst of the quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round was Drake May with New England. Very limited action, only 2 of 3 for 19 yards. I think it is clear that he is not going to start the season there. It's going to be Jacoby Brissett.
Milton has a chance?
Do what?
You don't think Joe Milton has a chance? Because he looked pretty impressive.
As much as they want to talk about him, he's doing it against third-string opponents. He's doing it against third-string opponents. I'm not saying he can't turn out to be, a really good quarterback. And this could be a situation where, they drafted 2 guys, and maybe the second one ends up being the star. They hedged their bets. Because they weren't sure what they were going to get. And, it reminds me of when RG3 and Kirk Cousins were both drafted by the Washington Redskins. RG3 was great and all, and he played really well his first year, but he gets injured. And that opened the door for Cousins to come in. He looked really good. They had to go back to RG3. He rushed himself back because he had Cousins nipping on his heels. And, I think it cost him a long, productive career. And I hope that isn't the kind of thing that they do to May there in New England. If they give him some time to sit behind Brissett, learn the system, learn, how to be a starting professional quarterback, he'll be just fine. This is, this is overreaction to the first game. And I have a lot to overreact about. The next 2 guys that we're talking about, man, they played a lot. They played good. And, of course, I'm talking about Bo Nix with Denver. I
heard he did good.
He went 15 of 21, threw a touchdown, was more mobile than people gave him credit for. He had 125 yards passing. And after watching the first preseason game, I will be stunned if Nix doesn't start the season as the starter. Okay. They started with Stidham, and, he had some limited action. Then they went to Nix. They let him play a majority of the game. And, I just thought that he played really well. And, he looks like a more mobile version of Drew Brees, and that's exactly what Sean Payton's hoping for. And so my mind on Denver this year, and we'll look at their schedule and everything, I think that they are going to fare relatively well if they can play defense and run the ball behind this guy if he's the starting quarterback. The other guy, of course, is J.J. McCarthy, who you posted. You're like, damn it, because
I said it from the beginning.
Yeah, you knew. Well, listen, I wasn't sure, but the proof's in the pudding. 2 touchdown passes. Now, he did throw an interception, but I don't think that was necessarily his fault. But he went 11 of 17, 188 yards. He showed some mobility. I thought that, I still think that there's a chance they're going to start Darnold to begin the season. We'll see how things go the next couple weeks in the preseason. But just on first glance, he should be starting. He's their quarterback in the future. It depends on, the level of competition. Are they going to let him start next week? If he starts next week and he can do what he did in the game this last weekend against the number ones of another team, I don't think there's anything that'll hold Minnesota back from him being the starter right out of the gate. And so you go to Washington and Jalen Daniels, and I tell you, in limited action, he was very mobile. We saw exactly what we saw at LSU, okay? 2 for 3, 45 yards, ran for a touchdown. They got a lot to be excited about with the Washington Commanders.
Yeah. Also, there's some breaking news. Praying to God, it's really minor. Jahmyr Gibbs is getting evaluated for, I guess, a leg injury he suffered today to practice.
Uh-oh.
So, Adam Scheffler just shared it.
Yeah.
Also, Detroit has some roster moves. Unfortunately, I was hoping the kid would make it, but we released Anton Green, and we signed a new quarterback. Who was the quarterback before Stanton at Georgia? Joe Forum?
I don't know.
It was his last name was Forum.
Forum?
Yeah, he played at Georgia.
I don't know.
I think he came from the Commanders.
Okay.
But we signed him because Hendon Hooker got his first game action, and he did pretty good. He ran the ball. He actually had a beautiful run. And the beautiful run, he actually took out 2 defenders. I mean, ran them right over. And unfortunately got concussion. So now he's in concussion.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, you don't want to do it. I get what he was doing, He was trying to, impress the coaches, get some limelight. And I get it because he didn't get to play a rookie much,
Right.
And so I understand. I totally get what he was trying to do, but that's just something you don't want to do because in this league you get a concussion real fast. And even though he made a good play, it cost him because now, he's in concussion protocol. So, Goff ain't going to play at all this preseason. So, basically the only person in camp is Stennett, is it? Not Stennett, but Nate Sudfeld. That's it.
Right.
and Jared Goff, so there's no really competition there other than those two. So they signed Jake Form today, and then we released the O lineman, and then I think we signed linebacker. If I'm not mistaken. I think they were low name players. I tried to pull up the list on Twitter, but I'm not getting it. It's not coming through.
Well, in league news, Hassan Reddick, who was traded this offseason from the Philadelphia Eagles to the New York Jets, he has not reported to camp. And he has requested a trade from the Jets to leave there because they're not interested in paying him the kind of money that he thinks he's worth. And so this was reported, by Adam Schefter, today. I don't know who at this point in time wants to pay $25+ million to a linebacker right now. I think everybody in the league, and maybe we'll find out, maybe we're wrong, but obviously he hasn't been in camp, so he's disgruntled. The organization is disgruntled. Maybe they don't want to let him go, and they'll be like, you'll either play for us or you won't play at all. And that'll force him to come in. I don't know if they had big plans for him with New York. But New York has always had a lot of drama. They definitely have some, now that they've got Aaron Rodgers coming back. And so we'll just have to wait and see if how this plays out.
I'm just going to say something really quick.
Sure.
When the Lions were looking for coaches, was the same time Robert Saleh got hired as the Jets coach.
And right. They interviewed Saleh also.
There was a big rumor that he was going to be the coach because he's from Dearborn, he's from the area, and it all made sense, right?
Sure.
And a big part of me really wanted him. I liked him. I was like, but after seeing what we got to where he's at, I thank God every day we picked Dan Campbell over him.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if he don't do something this year, he should be done as a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just have to see how the season plays out. I mean, I think that if they don't make the playoffs, I think everybody's job's on the line there in New York. They're running with the same group. They added some more offensive linemen. We haven't done the Jets yet. We'll probably do them next week, But it just feels like that, he is – I think he's a great defensive coordinator, but he had a lot of great players when he was in San Francisco. Now, the defense has played really well for the Jets, but the offense has stunk it up several years in a row now. And it isn't all, Aaron Rodgers' fault. He can't help himself from getting hurt, okay? That's really not his fault. So now, there's rumors that he's got a sore ankle. It's the same one that he tore the Achilles on. He didn't necessarily get the approved surgery, because I'm going to take this and I'm going to come back sooner, was the situation last year. If it turns out he can't play this year, his career might be over, and everybody on that team, from the GM down, is going to be fired, okay? Because, the team doctors or whoever allowed him to go with the alternative medicine rather than an actual surgery to make sure he was ready to go. The offense hasn't looked any better. He's got an offensive coordinator that he is, familiar with, and they're running Aaron Rodgers' system. They've got plenty of weapons. They signed Mike Williams to go with, Garrett Wilson. They should have no problem running the football with Breece Hall and Israel Abanikanda. So, yeah, the Jets, and like I said, we're kind of previewing them here a little bit early because we don't have a graphic for them. But, with Reddick wanting out, I just, it feels like that the organization is a little dysfunctional, and I'm surprised that they don't want to pay him, even though I think they've got plenty of money under the salary cap. Because thanks to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, took a pay cut for, everything that he was doing, before the season even began last year, because he wanted to bring in the best players that they could. They brought in Dalvin Cook. He wasn't all that was cracked up to be. They ended up releasing him. He ended up with the Ravens, and they ended up with another losing season. So, I mean, that's just the Jets there. Just other things around the league. Justin Simmons is supposed to be meeting with the Atlanta Falcons. He met with the New Orleans Saints last week, and so he's looking for a contract, looking to sign with somebody. He's a high-end safety who used to play for Denver, of course, and so he's looking to get paid. That's one of the reasons why they let him go in Denver with their salary cap troubles. And then, we've already talked about the quarterbacks, all the quarterbacks having, their first starts and all. But for the most part, I thought that the first week of preseason was fun. We did have some injuries, and one of those injuries was to Marquise Hollywood Brown in Kansas City. He dislocated something in his clavicle area. And so he's looking at 4 to 6 weeks being out. He luckily didn't have to have surgery, according to Andy Reid today. And so, he just landed on his shoulder wrong after making the one reception, one catch, 11 yards, in the preseason game against Jacksonville. But the only other thing I have as far as news from the first week of the preseason is I did not notice this in any of the other games, but the Sunday night game where, or maybe it was afternoon, that the Indianapolis Colts played, Jonathan Taylor and there were a few others were wearing those Guardian caps. And they're baggy and they're makeshift. And, we've seen the ones that they have in, like training camp to prevent head injuries. These actually had the logo on the side and their number on the back. And they didn't look awful. And so, I could see a lot more players wearing those. I think that it is there's probably a lot of players that are like, I don't want to wear that. I don't want to look soft. You know what I mean? But I think that I just think that it's a trend. And I think that more and more players, if he plays well and it doesn't slow him down, there was a couple of defensive players that were wearing them, but he was a notable player, a star, if you will, that wore one of these Guardian caps. And if he plays well, doesn't have any problem, doesn't get slowed down, he can hit the hole, they're not grabbing it and making it easier to tackle him. I think that, this will be something that other players think about and will start to do more of. They've opened up the option for the players to use them during the regular season games if they want to. Do you think, like I do, that it's a trend that more and more players will start to use them once they realize it's not a hindrance to their game?
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry, I was answering a question. What was that one more time? Real fast.
Do you think more players are going to use the Guardian caps in actual games once they realize it's not a hindrance to them playing?
I don't know, because do you think any players are going to wear it this year?
Well, I mean, Jonathan Taylor wore it in a preseason game. I'm expecting he's probably going to wear it all year long as he's sure it's not hurting his game.
I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, it's a real possibility. You see players, I think, every year get more and more on board with trying to protect their bodies. So I'm not going to shoot the ideal that we're not going to start seeing some players do it. It's just hard to say because I've heard some players say it's okay for practice, but they don't like it as much because it puts more weight on their head. It's harder for them to turn their head. I've heard a couple players mention those things like that. So I mean, it's just pretty much we just have to see how this trend goes. I mean, to me, if it's not messing your game up and then giving you a chance to be more healthy and less chance as having a concussion, I see some positives to it.
All right, well, let's start our first team profile. It's going to be the Cleveland Browns. And if you'd like, you can take it away, Chris.
Okay. Hang on 1 second. All right, Cleveland Browns. Now, I want to start this off before we get right into this. David told me we're doing the Browns tonight, and I was just perfect because I was blown away. And now we've had this discussion about domes at stadiums multiple times, right? But if what I'm about to show you guys turns out to be true, and could be because the rumor has it the Browns are trying to purchase a bunch of acres in a north suburb of Cleveland to build this stadium, and supposedly this is the design and exactly what they want to do. And if this is it, David, this might be the best stadium I think I've seen. And I hate to say it because it's a dome, but it's sick. Okay. Can you guys see that? Can you see that, David? But check this stadium out, man.
Yeah, I could see it. Everybody's trying to outdo each other, when it comes to, the newest, bigger, better stadium. And so, I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, one of the things that has, been going on, like when AT&T Stadium was built, you got the largest video screen, in the world or whatever. And then they built that big one that's there at SoFi Stadium.
Yeah.
And so now it looks like they want to have the entire side of the stadium, just, huge and crazy. And, my whole thing is that are they going to make the city pay for part of it? Or are they actually going to pay for it themselves? Because, when you start talking about, these stadiums used to be less than $1 billion. Then they became $1 billion, and we thought that was outrageous for AT&T Stadium. And the next thing you know, they're spending $4 billion on SoFi. Now it's going to be $5-6 billion, and they're going to want city, state, county funding, to help them do all that. And then the franchise is worth more and more and more money. And who gets that money? The owner does.
Yeah.
Not the city, not whoever it was that helped purchase it. It's not going to help lower ticket costs. It's not going to help make concessions cheaper. It's not going to do anything other than we have a monstrosity of a stadium, which will obviously get a Super Bowl. It'll get if it's a dome, it'll have the Final Four. They can host, World Cup soccer, who knows what they'll have planned for it, but it's all about maximizing the amount of money they can get out of people's pockets to help build the stadium so they can maximize the amount of money they can stick in their pockets with the stadium. And they're not the only team that does it. Every team that doesn't privately fund the stadium themselves is doing that. And then there'll be, another threat to, there's other places. St. Louis wants a football team again. We're really strong about maybe San Antonio, Texas needs a football team. They really need one in Utah. They really need one in Virginia. They really need, and they leverage people into believing they're going to lose their team. And Clevelanders will be more scared than anybody because they've seen it happen before.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Now, I know in the video it says the owners are going to pay a portion of it, and then the rest would be funded by taxpayers. So It wouldn't be fully, but it would be partial. But to me, that's unique for Cleveland because I feel like I used to deliver to a lot of Cleveland Targets, the groceries and stuff when I drove a truck. So going in Cleveland, there's some cool stuff to Cleveland. You got the Hall of Fame's not too far. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's not too far. But in Cleveland, all you really got is the Browns and the Cavaliers.
You got the Guardians,
former Guardians. And the Guardians. Other than that, it just seems like there's not much to the city, I guess you could say, after that point, to what I've seen. So to me, I think it could be a huge thing for Cleveland if they did do that stadium. Just the revenue they could use to maybe hopefully trickle down to the city of Cleveland, But we all know how that stuff works.
Right.
So anyways, let's get to where we going. They added Jameson Winston, which this could go either way. If Watson is hurt again, Winston either can come in and really save the day, or he could be the other Winston. You just really never know until you see him get out there. But when he's on, and he could play good football. We've seen Jameson Winston play good football, So I think that wasn't a bad ad, especially add in Hutley. Hutley from Baltimore, the same Hutley, right?
Yep.
So I think this is huge because to me, the Browns and Baltimore play similar style football. So I feel like Hutley's came in for the Browns or for Baltimore at times and has really shown that he can steal the game and make some plays and be a good quarterback in this league. So to me, you get it two good backup QBs, which we all know was their downfall last year, or they would have made a lot more noise than they did. But
I thought Joe Flacco played well, even in the playoff game, but they just ran into a buzzsaw in Houston, but there's so much that they don't know if they're going to get the maximum amount of time and talent out of Deshaun Watson. It feels like they always got to have another quarterback. And so they brought in two proven backups, to replace the two that they had, and they're younger, they're more mobile, especially Huntley. But, Winston is a bona fide starter in the league. I know he's thrown 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in the same season. I base that off of the system that he was playing in under Bruce Arians, where no risk it, you don't get no biscuit. Yep. And so he just chucked it up all the time because that was the system they were playing. Yeah. Before that, he had never thrown more than, I want to say, 16 in a season. But that particular year when Arians showed up, It's just like, let's throw it deep and let's find out what happens. Too many 50-50 balls ended up in the other team's hands.
Yeah. They added a decent running back, Nate Hines from the Colts. Dante Foreman, he's shown some signs. He can still run the ball, but I like that Hines pickup, especially with Chubb coming back from injury. You got another dude who can pound the ball, and hopefully they'll give Chubb an easy way to come back this year after that bad leg injury. And from the videos I've seen him actually working out, he was like squatting, I think they said like 400 pounds like a week ago. So that was pretty impressive. Jerry Jeudy comes to Cleveland, which I think that's a very good pickup. I've always believed that Denver did not use Jeudy properly. And so I think a change of scenery is really going to be good for Jeudy. They added tight end Gianna V. Ricky. I'm not really sure who he is. They did get an old lineman, Brian Allen, and a defensive end, Quentin Jefferson, and a linebacker, Jordan Hicks, Devin Bush. I like that Devin Bush signing right there.
Yeah, former Steeler. Hicks is a former Viking, so a couple of good linebackers there I think they added.
And they got cornerback Tony Brown, Justin Hardy. And Cleveland's defense was pretty stout last year. That is one reason why they still made the playoffs, even with all the injuries to the QB and situation they had going on. It's because of that defense. Fortunately, Joe Flacco retired. P.J. Walker left. No offense, P.J. Walker. He had a good run, but I think his time just ran out. Kareem Hunt left. They lost Harrison Bryant, Marquise Goodwin, Jacob Grant, and they lost old lineman Garen Christian, Nick Harris, defense tackle Jordan Elliott, linebacker Jacob Phillips, linebacker Matthew Adams, Stone Talaki, and linebacker Anthony Walker. And CB Mike Ford Jr. and safety Darren Hamlin. So they lost some players on defense, but I feel like with this offseason, they picked up a lot of those replacements. Plus, they added a second-round pick, defensive tackle Michael Hall, and third-round pick Zach Center, lineman center, or offensive guard, I believe. Zach Zenner's from Michigan. Kid's a beast. Unfortunately, tore his ACL against Ohio State, I believe. And but he should. I think he's at training camp, or he's probably on the PUP list. There might be a couple more weeks before he's actually activated, but once he gets going and can play, there's a good chance that if somebody goes down, or he might even be able to bump in and be started as soon as he can play. I think he's pro ready. I know he was a senior last year, so he had all 4 years with Jim Harbaugh. The Browns, I have them actually. I think they could be the team to beat between them and Baltimore. I think Pittsburgh has a chance at wild card. Obviously, I'm not counting them out, but I think the two best teams in that division right now are probably the Browns and Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a really tough division, the AFC North.
Oh, I forgot about Cincy, right?
Yep, Cincinnati. You look at this division, you look at their schedule. Cleveland opens with Dallas. I expect them to beat Dallas. I think Dallas, they got to go to Cleveland to open the season. If Deshaun Watson's at full speed and, Nick Chubb's ready to run, I think that Dallas could be in trouble. Remember, they're switching defenses. Their head coach and defensive coordinator, or the head coach of Washington, is the former defensive coordinator at Dallas, Dan Quinn. He left in the offseason. So you got everybody trying to learn a new defense in Dallas under Mike Zimmer. I think Cleveland They got the same offense and defense as they had last year. Everybody kind of knows each other. They brought in some reinforcements, for their offensive line and in the linebacker core. A solid kicker. They had trouble with the kicking game last year, but I think they beat Dallas in week 1. I think that when you look at their schedule, now they are playing the AFC East. They got to go to Washington and to Philadelphia back-to-back. 3 straight games on the road in late September and October. Of course, in division, they got to play against Cincy, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh, but they're playing at home. They get some of their toughest games at home. Miami will be at home. Kansas City will be at home. The Chargers will be at home. Dallas will be at home. I think they can win 3 out of 4 of those.
Yeah.
And so 11 wins. I think they'll be right in the thick of it, but they're going to cannibalize each other in the AFC North. But I think Cleveland can make the playoffs.
Oh, for sure. I agree. I'm actually excited to see them. Also, real quick, before we get to the next team, big news out of Detroit, according to Euro Jackson, hamstring injury for Jamar Gibbs. Let him sit for us at training camp. Sounds like if that's the case, he'll be ready to go hopefully by week 1. Good news, knock on wood, God was with us. So all you people I see freaking out on Facebook in the comment section about fantasy drafts, relax, chill out, have a cold beer, and come and join the show and come talk football with us.
And we're going to talk about the Washington Commanders next. And, so Washington, got Dan Quinn comes in. We just talked about him. He's the head coach. They've got Cliff Kingsbury, an offensive coordinator. And we talked about already Jalen Daniels had a really good, in limited action here this first week of the preseason. Looked good. They've got Marcus Mariota they brought in to probably back him up. Austin Eckler was a huge weapon for the Chargers. I like him coming in, and they're going to pair him with Brian Robinson, at the running back position. Zach Ertz is a veteran tight end, comes over after spending some time with Arizona, formerly the Philadelphia Eagle. Lot of work on the offensive line. They got the center from the Cowboys and Tyler Biadasz. I don't know how to pronounce that. But Nick Allegretti comes over. He has been with the Kansas City Chiefs for several years now. Real good run stuffer when it comes to blocking for the run, getting out in front. And then Michael Dieter. So I expect a much better offensive line here out of Washington. And then because Dan Quinn's coming over and he's installing his defense, he brought in Bobby Wagner. We all know Dan Quinn started and was the Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator for the Seahawks. When they had the Legion of Boom, Bobby Wagner knows the defense. He brings him in to be the starting middle linebacker here for Washington. I think that's a big move. He also brings in Dorrance Armstrong, another Cowboy who played for Dan Quinn. Him and Dante Fowler both played for him in Dallas. Cleveland Farrell comes in. They got Michael Walker at linebacker. They bolstered their secondary, and not just through free agency. They got second-round pick Mike Sanderstill out of Michigan. I know you really like him, Chris. And then, their losses, well, in my opinion, there's only a couple of big losses here. Logan Thomas already got cut by San Francisco. He couldn't make it out there. But Curtis Samuel going to Buffalo, I think that he's a good wide receiver that they shouldn't have let go. Antonio Gibson leaves and goes to New England. And then Sam Howell, they traded him to Seattle, and he played well in the preseason for Seattle out there. I just don't think that – I think when it came to him being there, getting a brand new coach, they decided to just go in another direction and start fresh with a new quarterback so that they didn't have to worry about paying Howell, too quickly. I think he will eventually end up the starter in Seattle. And then, of course, Jacoby Brissett, kind of a stopgap starter for them. He's going to be the starter in New England. We talked about him earlier. But, Jaden Daniels gets picked up, here at quarterback. And from LSU in the first round, they got Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle of Illinois. I think he's going to provide a lot. If they team him with Dorrance Armstrong up front, I think that will really improve the defensive line. You look at their schedule here, Chris, and, of course, they're in the NFC East. They got to deal with Dallas. They got to deal with Philadelphia. The Giants, we don't really know what we're going to get out of them this year. I think they could surprise some people. But, they got to go on the road to Cincinnati. They got to go on the road, of course, to New Orleans and at Dallas the last week of the season. That could be for a chance to make the playoffs. If they really improve this year, that could be for a chance to make the playoffs. But overall, I don't think this is a killer schedule. They do have to play the AFC North, but they've got Tennessee, New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina. A reinvigorated Chicago team might be tough, but they get them at home. And but they do have to go all the way out to Arizona. They got to go all the way down to Tampa to start the season. Tampa made the playoffs last year, and so I'm not sure they're going to come out of the gates like a ball of fire. But I could see them winning between 7 and 9 games this year, Chris. What do you think?
I think that'd be pretty good if they can hit that mark. I think that'd be a hell of a margin from the last couple of years. Second round pick, Mike Singletary. I think that was a huge pick for them too. That kid's gonna be good.
Okay, we will move on to our next team. And this one will be for you. We're going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. Let me get that drawn up here. And just real quick, I think that Arizona played really tough last year. They were not an easy team, to get by. They beat Dallas. They were tough on everybody. Now, I know that Philly wasn't the normal Philly at the end of the year that we've seen in the past, but they went into Philly and beat Philly. Go ahead, Chris. Take it away, brother.
The Cardinals, we kind of thought last year, I think David actually predicted them to go, 0-17? We thought they would just
I thought they would.
But that wasn't the case at all. Kyle Murray, he looked like he finally put the video games down and actually studied, because he looked a lot better as a quarterback last season than he looked, I thought, previous before his injury.
And I think that because of that injury, it gave him a chance to step back. He learned the system a little bit better. Of course, they had a new system on offense, and he got to watch how other players reacted to a veteran quarterback, trying to lead them to some wins. Josh, Dobbs was there last year. And as soon as Murray was able to take over, they shipped Dobbs off. And Murray picked right up where he left off and did really well.
Yeah. They added Desmond Ridder, which it's a good young backup to have. Not a bad move. Running back DJ Dallas, not too familiar with him.
He comes from Seattle. He'd been like the third string guy.
Okay.
Special teams, he's a returner. But now that they picked up Zach Charbonnet in Seattle, he was kind of expendable.
Okay. And then Zay Jones, that's from Jaguars, right?
Yep.
He's shown some flashes to be fast and be a decent receiver. So we'll see if him and Murray have some big plays. Chris Moore, I'm not too familiar with Chris Moore.
He came over from Tennessee.
Okay. That's probably why. Offensive lineman Johanna Williams. They picked up Even Brown, which I'm pretty sure he played in Detroit last year or previously. He sounds familiar. And defensive lineman Justin Jones. Defensive lineman Elijah Nicholas.
Belial Nichols.
And defensive lineman Chris Tonga.
Chris Tonga.
And linebacker Mac Wilson Sr. and cornerback Sean Murphy Bunting.
Yeah.
They've had some decent ads here. I think, especially with the first round pick, Marvin Harris Jr. So you got Zay Jones, which I already mentioned has the ability to be fast. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. on the other side that is really fast. So you have the ability to actually have an explosive offense, especially when the defense has to worry about Murray out there running around. So I do like that pickup. They also picked up Darius Robinson, defensive lineman.
Yep. Played at Missouri. He was one. I think he was a co-SEC Defensive Player of the Year.
Yep. And then on third round, they got Trey Benson.
And I would look out for Trey Benson. They've had kind of been like jack of all trades, bringing in whoever they could. They've had, the running back who used to be and I can't think of his name all of a sudden. He played at Pittsburgh for several years. He came to Arizona and he's done well. But, he's not the receiver out of the backfield that you would want. And I think that given the opportunity, Trey Benson, who comes from Florida State, could supplant him in his position. James Conner. That's the guy I'm thinking
Yes.
of. And so Connor's been there, and he's a tough runner, north and south kind of guy. But like I said, not a receiver out of the backfield. Benson is a receiver. If he just works on his pass protection, I think he'll have a real good opportunity to maybe take over as a starter here. Not necessarily this year, but in the future.
Yeah. I like the way the Cardinals are going.
I think that, if you look at their schedule, it's a tough one, though. That's the problem, is they got a real tough because they're already playing in the AFC West, okay? Then they've got some of the big dogs in the other divisions that they've got to go through. They're playing both Detroit and Green Bay. They got to go to Minnesota also. That one's on the road. Luckily they get New England. They don't have to go clear to New England in December. New England's got to come to them. So that's an important one. But they're on the road week 1 at Buffalo. That's going to be a tough one to open the season.
Yeah.
At Miami later in the season there. I don't know. I want to say I think that they have a chance, to get in the playoffs this year because they are building in a positive fashion. But their schedule looks brutal to me.
The one cool thing is I noticed something here.
What's that?
They got one cold game, guaranteed cold game. Seattle, the 24th of November. Other than that, everybody.
I think it's a small chance that it's going to be like it ain't going to be freezing.
No, but it could be maybe 40 degrees, maybe.
But like you
think
said,
about
most of their stuff, especially the stuff that is going to be outdoors, where they're in, like they get Miami in October, that'll be decent weather.
Yep, and they got
it won't be 100 degrees in the shade during that time.
No, and Chicago will be at home. The Jets will be at home. Seattle will be outside. They got to go to Minnesota, but the
That's a
worst,
dome.
but worst of the cold's going to be is walking from the bus in the building.
Right.
Then they got Seattle at home, New England at home. They're at Carolina, which December 22nd. There's a chance that Carolina could be 30 degrees because 2 years ago when the Lions played Carolina and lost to Carolina in Carolina, it was 30 degrees and their field was actually frozen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a chance there, but that's a hit and miss. And then they got LA and San Francisco. So, I mean, they got a tough schedule, but the outdoor schedule, I guess, favors them.
Yeah. So now we're going to go to the next team, which is going to be our final team that we're going to talk about tonight, is the Denver Broncos.
The Broncos.
And we talked about Bo Nix having a really good game, for his first preseason action. He played extended minutes. And like I said, he looked like Drew Brees out there, which is exactly what Sean Payton is looking for. I know they brought in Zach Wilson. I think that Sean Payton thought by bringing in Zach Wilson, he's giving him an opportunity to fix whatever problems he's had with him, in other places. He's had a new offensive coordinator every year he's been in the league, okay? He's been thrust into the spotlight, thrust into the starting job. We talked about this when the trade went down and he got traded to Denver, that I thought this is a good idea here. This gives them a chance for him to sit, no pressure to play, learn behind somebody like he was supposed to do last year with Aaron Rodgers, to where, there isn't so much pressure on him and he can, they don't have to keep the training wheels on all the time because they're worried about him turning the ball over.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to put it up there. Sorry. All right.
And so, all right, so we get to, the wide receiver room. Okay, they had some guys that got hurt last year. Tim Patrick, like we talked about before, you don't think they used Jerry Jeudy very well. They still have Cam Sutton, or Cortland Sutton, I should say, at wide receiver. Tim Patrick's healthy. He's back. He played in the first preseason game. They brought in one of the best, I think, third down wide receivers in Josh Reynolds. I think he used to play for Detroit for a short time. Philip Dorsett's been in Indianapolis. He's been in New England. He's been all over the place. But they're working on, bringing in some decent players for low money because their salary cap is taking a huge hit by letting go of Russell Wilson. Dwayne Washington was like a returner for them. They traded Jerry Jeudy to the Browns. Chris Manhertz didn't fit the system. A couple of offensive linemen had to be let go because they couldn't afford them. Defensively, it's the same way with Justin Simmons, Mike Purcell, Josie Jewell. They just couldn't afford everybody because of how much their salary cap was in such dire straits. But they picked up some veteran players, some guys that can fill the gaps and fill some needs. They're not looking to get paid everything in their brother because they're older guys, but they want to play for a chance to be a winner. And so you get the likes of a John Franklin Myers at defensive end. You get a Cody Barton at linebacker. You get a Levi Wallace at corner. You get a Sam Mustipher, a Calvin Throckmorton on offensive line, guys that have paid their dues in the league but are looking for an opportunity to start for a team that needs some holes filled in. And so all of these guys come in. Of course, we talked about Bo Nix. He's the first-round draft pick. I expect he's going to be the starter from the word go, okay? And then he played at Oregon, so he's got his buddy Troy Franklin there in the 4th round at wide receiver. So it's somebody that he's familiar with. They're both going to, grow up in this offense together. And, originally I thought Denver was a team that might not win 5 games. And I know this is overreaction from the first week of the preseason, but seeing Bo Nix play, seeing the way the defense, played, I just think that Denver has a real chance to be on the edge of playoff contention this year. They play in a tough division with Kansas City. They're going to have to play the Chargers. The Raiders, I think they'll be improved, but I don't think that they're going to set the world on fire. But then, when it comes to the rest of their schedule, they're playing, the AFC North. So they got to go on the road to Cincinnati. They got to go on the road to play against Baltimore. They're going to be at home for Pittsburgh, and they'll be at home for Cleveland on a Monday night, which will be a fun game, I think. But you're looking at Tampa Bay, at Seattle, at New Orleans, playing at home against the Indianapolis Colts, against the Atlanta Falcons. I think those are, games they can win. I think those are games they can win. Another team anywhere from 7 to 9 victories here, but I think they can push for playoff, positioning at the end.
Yeah. This is like, I always pick one team a year to be like really interested in to see how it's playing. Not really dark horse, but just to see what's going to happen with them. And Denver is that team, I think, this year for me. Because last year it was just kind of a shit show. And it wasn't – and I was really actually excited for Sean Payton's return back to the NFL. And I feel like it was kind of like not as I expected it to really go. Because I've never seen such a shit show situation, I guess, happen with him being really involved, other than him, playing players to hurt people in the Super Bowl or to win the Super Bowl that year, or right. Mountain Gate, whatever you want to call it. So other than that situation, you've never really seen such a drama situation with the Russell Wilson stuff. So I'm actually really excited to see who's at fault.
It's like a blank slate, start over, here we go. Let's see what they can do in Denver.
Exactly. Now I'm excited about it. And I know the city, Denver, has to be ecstatic about it because, when I drove a truck, I used to go to Denver a lot, and the one big truck stop to stay at was right across the stadium from Denver Stadium. It's like literally across the street. Like, I've been there on Sundays watching Denver games in the truck stop while they're playing right across the street. And just to hear, like, the locals come in there and, like, just bitch, like, what I mean? No one was excited about football, so I know they're dying for a good change there. So let's see what they can be. And I'm kind of curious about this Bo Nix. There was a lot of hype around him and in the draft, and I feel like he's that kind of kid that they kind of made it seem like he was the left out of the category of the rest of the guys. So I'm kind of curious to see if he can win the starting job and see how good he does if he does start this season.
Yeah. Well, and that's pretty much all we've got for this week. We got week 2 of the preseason coming up. Let's take a quick look here. And I will tell you which games I think are going to be fun, with the second week of the preseason.
Here we go. Here's a good question, David.
All right.
Who do you all think?
Who do you all think playoffs this year? Did not make the playoffs last year in the NFL. Well, I mean, we're going to have our preseason predictions. You'll have yours and I'll have mine. coming up here in probably another week or so. But, for me, I think Atlanta makes the playoffs. I think they win that division. I wanted it to be New Orleans, but that's just fool's gold now. I think Atlanta will make the playoffs. I think that Dallas is not going to make the playoffs. Could be Chicago. Could be the Cardinals. I don't think it'll be Minnesota. I don't think that it'll be Washington. In the AFC, maybe the Chargers, maybe the Broncos, maybe the Steelers. But, I know that the Bengals will be right in the thick of it. They didn't make the playoffs last year. They got Burrow coming back. In the South, Houston made the playoffs and Jacksonville didn't. I think that Jacksonville's in one of those positions where you got to take a step back before you can take a step forward. And I expect they'll be back in the playoffs this year. So, and then Tennessee is a wild card, variable right now. But I think that we're going to see Miami's going to struggle to make the playoffs again this year because of lack of defense. I think that Jacksonville will rebound and that they'll take that spot. Everybody's, like I said, they're going to cannibalize each other in the AFC North. Any of those four teams or all of those four teams could make the playoffs. I don't think there's any doubt. Unless Patrick Mahomes goes down, Kansas City will be in the playoffs. I think Buffalo will be in the playoffs.
I think Buffalo's the team that slips back.
You think they're the team that slips back and not Miami?
I think there's a good question on Miami, but I still feel like Miami's offense is a tad bit better than Buffalo's, so I feel like their offense could temporarily save a couple games they almost lose.
Right.
But I feel like Buffalo's lost a little bit more to their offense, and their defense, where I think they lose a couple games that they would normally win. I mean, I'm not 100% because you can't ever. I don't think you can count a quarterback out like what's his last name?
And remember, I mean, we don't really know anything. Last year, we thought that Arizona wasn't going to win a game, and nobody had Houston winning the division, because you got a rookie quarterback. So, I mean, there's always a possibility that a team that you don't see coming comes out of nowhere and gets in. You could think about, like, the 99 St. Louis Rams win the Super Bowl. I don't know, just random, thoughts in my mind. You got teams that weren't expected to make it to the Super Bowl, get there. We've seen Carolina do it twice, get to the Super Bowl. Now, they didn't win, but nobody expected them to get there and win it, or even get to that point.
Well, Carolina, their second one against Denver and Peyton, I felt like they had a chance to win that one.
Right.
You know what I mean? I felt like they legit had a chance in that one. And I feel like Von Miller and that defense just stole the game because they just beat the shit out of Cam Newton.
And how about the Arizona Cardinals with Kurt Warner making it to the Super Bowl?
That's true.
I mean, that's another one. There you never really know for sure. We can make our best guesses, and think we know what we know, and then week one comes around and you're like, how the hell did that happen?
Exactly.
And then the end of the season comes along and you're like, yep, everybody had Green Bay and Detroit battling for the division lead. Somehow Chicago wins it. You would be so mad.
I think anybody would be mad.
Yeah. But, okay, so week 2 of the preseason begins this week. with the Philadelphia Eagles at the New England Patriots on Thursday. The good Saturday games will be the Detroit Lions at the Kansas City Chiefs. That'll be fun.
Yeah, well,
let's see.
Even though we're probably not seeing. Wait a minute, some of our starters might play. Campbell's throwing a possibility of that.
Buffalo at Pittsburgh is the Saturday night game. Sunday, we'll see Green Bay at Denver and New Orleans at San Francisco. So there's a few good games out there. Minnesota at Cleveland in the afternoon on Saturday. So those are your week 2 preseason games. We'll be back next weekend, either on Sunday or Monday night, because that's what we've been doing. And we'll review. We're getting down the nitty-gritty. I think we only got 4 more teams to go. It's the Jets, Tampa Bay, Seattle, and I think Indianapolis.
There we go. Speaking of that,
it'll be our 4 teams that we'll talk about next week.
Bill Jackson thinks Colts make the playoffs if Anthony Richardson stays healthy. He also thinks
could happen.
And he says right here, he thinks one question. I think it's this one. He said he got the Bengals and Colts making the playoffs that did not make it last year from the AFC. Not bad picks because he's not lying. The Colts were in the thick of it. And then he said we won't see Goff in the preseason. I don't think so either. And we'll see Goff week 1. Well, we better hope we see him week 1. If we don't, we got problems. But no, I know Campbell made a comment that he's thinking about maybe playing some starters. He didn't say offense. He didn't say defense. He didn't say names. So he's either trying to fuck with Kansas City a little bit, making them think they might see some starters, or who knows. It's Campbell.
Well,
you never know.
You'll see the Chiefs starters for at least the first quarter. So
you think did they play the starters last week?
Sure did. We don't screw around. We win Super Bowls, baby.
Your guys are, you're one of the few teams that actually play their starters right off the bat. Usually no one does.
We'll see.
But, then they're at practice getting hurt.
Huh?
But then they're at practice getting hurt. So it's like you're fucked if you do and you're fucked if you don't, if that makes sense.
You
can rest them
when you're out there, and if something happens, it does. You can't tiptoe around on eggshells when you're playing in the National Football League.
No, we used to, when I played football, our coaches they preached to us, don't be lazy. And somebody asked one time, well, how, we're playing football, we're not being lazy. And the coach was like, it's not being lazy. He's like, what I mean is if the play, even if you can't make it to the ball, run to the ball. And he's like, why I say that? He goes, because I see it from time to time over all the years of playing the game, going to college, because they played college ball, a couple of them did, And they said it was common. If one player didn't hustle towards the ball and was just standing there because he couldn't make a play because it was way downfield, he's like, they would have somebody who's blocking fall into him and tear ACL, get seriously hurt by just being lazy and standing there. And
play at full speed at all the time, or you will end up getting hurt because trying not to get hurt.
Exactly. Yeah. And, at the time he said it, I was kind of like, you're just kind of saying that so because you got to. And then the first varsity game I went to, because I think I volunteered to be the water boy, because that's what it was. Junior varsity would have players to do the water. And the tight end kind of stood around on a play, and he had a dude fall in the back of his knee, and he tore his ACL. First couple drives of the game. And when they watched film, the coach pointed out, and he goes, this is the reason why I say don't become lazy and stand there, because if you were still running, you would have been 5 yards away by the time that dude fell right there. You would have even been sitting there. He goes, I get it. You had no one to block. The ball was in your facility. He goes, but if you weren't standing there, you would still be playing your senior season. And that's when it hit home. Like, you can't think about getting hurt. You just got to play. Yep. Play full speed or don't play at all. It's that simple.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a good week. We will see you next time.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Have a good night, David.
Thank you. We'll see you.
Later.